I think that all those problems and things coming home, that there's still so many people who don't really see that. You see the Republicans, for instance, not willing to do anything for education or look forward at all. It's all so short-term. It's very discouraging to see that. And hope that, the tipping point seemed to be the other way, where everyone was after their greed, and the greed continues. But hopefully we have just enough to tip the other way. And it seems like it's such a small margin that it's very scary.
Yeah.
and I don't know if you have any ideas about that, but just how can people get out of this greed mode, which I still see with all the budget talk and so on.
I'm going to make one negative statement and then I'm going to lead into a positive answer to your question. But I was struck last week by an article I saw. This isn't directly about greed, but it's about misplaced anger, which I worry a lot about. In England, that England is going through much the same that we are. In some ways, they're responding, I think, better than we are in terms of some of the conditions their government has put in place if their banks are going to get money and those kind of things. But this article was about how there's been now street protests in England, but they're not targeting the bankers and they're not targeting the politicians. They're targeting immigrants. They're blaming immigrants for the economic crisis. I worry about that a lot because we're not near the end of this unraveling. We're towards the beginning of the unraveling. And that, again, it poses tremendous challenges for us, but also, I think, opportunities. Now, here's the positive thing in light of what you said. I teach at a pretty conservative university, very conservative university in many ways. And it's a very progressive program, right? Justice and peace studies, especially how we do it. And the interest in our program among students is growing dramatically. And the quality of character of the students that are arriving and their desire is beyond greed. Their desire is they really want to be part of creating a different world. Their desire is they want greater justice. They think it's outrageous that we're destroying the environment for them and their children. They think it's outrageous to have an economic system that says it's okay for 47 million of your people not to have health care. The statistics that you raised, when they find out that the 3 richest people have assets, I think you said 4, it's actually the 40 poorest countries. The gross domestic product of the 40 poorest countries combined is less than the wealth of the 3 richest people in the world. They're outraged by those disparities, by those inequalities, and they're outraged at us for tolerating them. And they're looking for alternatives. And this is my fear about Obama is that, I'm glad Obama's on the scene. I think he, his background, I think there's a lot of good things. There's so many pitfalls I see for him. I don't even want to go into those now that I see him beginning to fall into. But what's really hopeful for me is how deep a longing there is for something different. And I think, and I'm, call me back in a year and we can talk about this because, I'm not a mind reader. But my worry is that if we allow Barack Obama, and if Barack Obama allows himself to be dragged into the center, the so-called center, in a Kairos moment, he and the nation will fail. And that's the direction I see him moving in right now, quite frankly. I'm not cynical about him. I'm not yelling at him. I'm mainly trying to get us on the hook of saying we've got to really lift up our voices. But I'm saying it in this context because hope is a fragile thing. And for young people in particular, who are awakening, who are longing, who want their lives to make a difference, if out of this, we do not create an atmosphere that rewards that sense of hope, that invites their idealism, invites their time, invites their energy, and bears some fruit, we could lose them. We could lose that generation in the political arena, which is the ugliest arena that I know there is in terms of working. We need them. We need that energy. We need that vitality. We need that sense of hope and possibility. And I see it. So there's a deep desire to get past what you said. But that greed is still deeply ingrained into, well, for sure one of the political parties, but it impacts the other political party a lot as well. We should not be naive about that. And it still is infecting our corporate culture for the most part. I think, anyone who believed this idea that the marketplace would somehow put a correct parameter on ethics, that view is now gone. Right? I mean, that has been absolutely discredited. We've seen the result of that. So again, I walk between this balance. I remember years and years ago, I read a book with the wonderful title. This would have been in the early 1970s or mid-1970s out of Chile. And the title was Between Honesty and Hope. That's somehow where I feel like I live most of the time. But what I'm trying to do is, instead of living between honesty and hope, is I'm trying to recognize that hope begins with honesty. And that it is in being honest about the problems we face that we can lift up the kind of future that we want to work towards. Okay, yes.
Yeah, again, I love to talk, and I really, I sense that too. I also teach, actually, I see kids together,
Okay.
less conservative, although it's kind of going in a similar direction here, but I sense that in the students. I really wanted that change, and I worried about the same thing. My question was really about what your sense was about, because what you said about what the, Americans feeling that they're somehow this manifest destiny is somehow kind of superior and kind of there to kind of enlighten the world, and that people have to come to terms with no, we're one of the other nations. And what I was wondering is the role of people, the fundamentalists, because I sense that basically it's inherent in fundamentalism, and I think in a lot of people's belief that faith, that's like the one and only, and you have to spread the word, you have to proselytize. And I said, some of my teenage friends, which I hope he doesn't go to those churches, but he actually did visit some of those mega churches, and they really do try to enlist young kids to kind of, feel that way, kind of go in that direction, like spread the word, proselytize. What is your sense about, how, is it really realistic to think that they're going to abandon that, or you feel that some of the,
Right.
the role of that church is declining, or maybe they're changing? I mean, what's your sense about the whole role of fundamentalism and that whole acceptance of
Okay,
declining?
and I can see Mel looking at the clock, so I'm going to try to be really brief here. Just 3 or 4 one-sentence comments. First, right now we're at a moment of at least temporary decline in influence. That, in my view, is a good thing. That, along with market fundamentalism being in decline, gives us an opportunity. And I think, but, here's the but. The but is, bad news is always good news for fundamentalism. Bad news is always good news for the apocalyptic worldview. And so I think that's why your question about, that gets at the need for authentic hope, and can we get past greed? Do students want that? Yes. But if there's a breakdown, if the breakdown continues and we're not offering viable, positive alternatives, we're going to see, I think, a dramatic resurgence in a kind of ugly fundamentalist certitude-based religion that's not going to be helpful. That's part of the reading of the science, and that's not determined, but it will flow out of what we do and how we live and what happens over the next few years. All right, well, thank you.